JoseDeCreeft is a man who can make sculpture out of anything. His work in stone, wood, bronze, ivory, beaten lead, steel, and clay can be found in museums, galleries, and private collections all over the world. This film is about a work in stone, the material he loves best. As he says,
I'm very impressed by the stones. I love the stones.
Nearly every morning, JoseDeCreeft walks in his yard among his stones, looking at them, testing them, turning them. He likes to know a stone well before he carves it, so he can take full advantage of the properties of the stone. Its balance, its volume, its degree of hardness, its color, its grain. This sometimes takes months or even years.
Sometimes I have stones for 25 years, for 30 years. I never find something enough beauty in myself for this piece of stone que I respect like my grandfather, no?
After much thought, he chose a 220-pound boulder of white marble, a stone he bought from another sculptor's widow nearly 15 years ago. I watched him as he started carving and wondered what it would become.
My first idea, it was to make a feminine form. A form, women, to fit in the form the stone.
Although DeCreeft knew he was going to make a female figure, he hadn't decided on the exact pose for her yet. In the beginning, he thought he would make a vertical piece, and so the first step was to make a flat base for her. JoseDeCreeft began his career in sculpture at the age of 13, working as an apprentice to a man making statues for the churches in Spain. He worked and studied in Spain until he was 21, and then he went to Paris, where he continued his training as a sculptor. He decided to learn how to carve stone, mainly as a way to save money, since he couldn't afford to have his clay and plaster models cast in bronze or reproduced in stone by craftsmen. He got a job with a stone carver who specialized in translating artists' work into stone. The more he learned about carving, the more he grew to love it. He also slowly grew to realize that stone had a quality and character which was unique, and to copy a clay model in stone was false. He grew to believe that each material in sculpture called for its own treatment. Because of this, he always uses shapes which are natural to the material he is using, and the finished work always reflects the substance in which it is expressed. This idea of being true to the material and working direct rather than translating a sketch has been DeCreeft's discipline ever since he left the stone carver to begin work on his own. He never forgot the craftsmanship he learned there, nor did he forget what this man always told him. The stone is like a woman. You will have more success by finesse than by force.
Well, you can be brutal with the piece of stone, because him is more strong than you all the time. No? Monsieur, be careful. You caress, no? You possibly have better results, because by brutality you never do anything. So you go pim-pam, you spoil the piece of stone.
DeCreeft carves with a vigor and strength that makes it hard to believe that he is 81 years old. He hits with force, but never with brutality. Every blow is controlled, rhythmic, and sure. To carve stone well, it's necessary to maintain a steady, even pace and a relaxed frame of mind. Countless hours of hard work go into a piece of sculpture, but DeCreeft loves his work and often sings while he carves.
La tarántula rimboicho muy malo, no se mata con piedra ni palo, tirarirerom, tirarirerom, tirarirerom. Ay, mare, no sé qué tengo, que ayer pasé por la era y al principiaba a entrarme el mal de la tembladera. ¿Será que a mí me ha picado la tarántula dañina y por eso me he quedado más delgado que una sardina? Malaya la araña que tiene en la barriga pinta una guitarra bailando se cura, tan breve dolor, ay, malaya la araña que a mí me picó.
In the first stages of carving, DeCreeft modified the original shape of the stone to fit his concept. He first carves only pleasing forms, feminine forms, but not definite arms or legs, just forms. He creates the general balance and movement of the piece without being specific about the details. Although he never works from drawings and doesn't make preliminary sketches before starting a piece of sculpture, drawing is very important for DeCreeft.
I draw all the time, because the drawing is the is the most important. Without the drawing, you can't do anything. Drawing is the foundation.
Drawing for DeCreeft is an exercise for strengthening his imagination. It helps him find the best of the numerous possibilities each stone contains. The drawing is not only recorded on the paper, it is more importantly fixed in his mind to become part of a storehouse of ideas and observations to help him while working on a stone. One day Jose was making some drawings, and I was filming him. We heard a splashing noise, looked up, and saw his wife, through the kitchen doorway, washing her hair. He couldn't resist the opportunity. Knowing she would be self-conscious if she knew what he was doing, he motioned to me to be as quiet as possible, and began working quickly. A sculpture, unlike a painting, can be observed from many angles, each of which presents a different silhouette and composition. In effect, one piece of sculpture is like 1,000 drawings, and each of them must be right. In a way, drawing is even more important for a sculptor than it is for a painter. To anyone who knows DeCreeft's sculpture, it's obvious that these studies of his wife washing her hair will never be translated into stone. But the sharpening of his powers of observation gained by drawing from a moving figure helps him every day he works. He knows instinctively all the proportions and possible positions of the human form.
Alegret, 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 la marinada, que llença el riu, que llença el riu, que llença el riu, el riu. Replega, replega, replega la rosada del bon estiu, del bon estiu, del bon estiu, estiu. Collint, 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 clavells i roses, i pensaments, i pensaments, i pensaments. Paraules amoroses, que llença el vent, que llença el vent, que llença el vent, el vent.
Jose was able to finish 3 drawings before Laurie discovered what we were doing. She came over and he showed her the drawings. She said she thought it was unfair of him not to warn her, but she liked the drawings, and so she forgave him. When he had modified the basic shape of the stone to his satisfaction, DeCreeft reached a point where he wanted to be more specific. Using a piece of charcoal, he began to draw on the marble. The challenge for DeCreeft is to find something of himself within the stone, to express his ideas within the possibilities of the stone, to dominate the stone while still remaining sensitive to its spirit. In this case, he decided that a reclining figure would be better than his original idea of a vertical figure. Since he had been working only in beautiful volumes and forms, it was possible for him to turn it and not lose anything. Though he had now decided on the basic position and the general composition, he still reserved the details for later. DeCreeft explained to me that the freedom to discover and create while he works is very important to him. If he feels obligated to merely do the physical labor of sculpture and copy something, even if it's only one of his drawings, the work becomes drudgery, and in a way, he becomes a slave to the idea. The excitement of discovery and creation every day while he is working makes the labor much easier. To work this way, however, demands that thought must precede every move.
Sit down, think, and look. As you know, coming every day, sit down 3 hours, you work 10 minutes. Or you work 3 hours, you think 10 minutes. This is what is the best. Think louder and work little. Like that you have, as you work, anybody. I destroy the piece of stone in 1 hour. It's easy. To make something. That's why when you make something, you do sit down. You do look and try.
DeCreeft sat down on the one-legged milking stool he often uses for carving. He looked and he tried. For DeCreeft, sculpture is truly a labor of love. He has been looking and trying for well over 60 years, and the longer he works, the greater is his desire to look more and try harder. One day, DeCreeft decided he would move from near the barn where he had been working to the gravel-covered area behind the house. He built a sort of stairway of wood blocks and placed a strong dolly he made at the bottom. After carefully wrestling the stone into place, he rolled it down the steps, and it landed perfectly on the dolly. He made a roadway of planks and slowly pulled the stone away, walking backwards. He has a theory that the human leg is constructed in such a way that there is more leverage backwards than forwards. Another of DeCreeft's theories is that a sculptor should know how to make his own tools. He makes almost all of his tools himself. The ones he buys, he always modifies in some way in his own blacksmith shop. Wouldn't it be better, I asked him, to get tools in a store and not bother with heating them in the forge, hammering them into shape, tempering them? He told me that he didn't think so, and for several reasons. The factory tools are all the same, but artists all have different hands, different ways to work, and all stones are different. DeCreeft makes tools to fit his hands, shapes them to work best for his technique, and tempers them to suit the stone he is working.
Catalunya com tan gran, qui l'ha vist tan rica i plena, i ara ve nostre senyor a declarar-nos a la guerra. Bon cop de fals, Catalunya nostra terra.
The theory of forging is this. A piece of metal is heated in a bed of coals. Air is blown into the coals to intensify the heat, either by a bellows or a blower, such as DeCreeft uses. When it is hot, it is beaten into shape on an anvil. After it is the right shape, it is tempered by quenching in salt water. The hardness is determined by the heat of the metal when it is plunged into the water.
Catalunya com tan gran, qui l'ha vist tan rica i plena, i ara ve nostre senyor a declarar-nos a la guerra. Bon cop de fals, Catalunya nostra terra.
A critic once asked Jose why he still worked with tools like a caveman when power tools and machines were so much easier. Jose told him, "I work with primitive tools because I don't have a factory. I work because I love it. I don't work to make sculpture for the 10-cent store. I work to make sculpture the most pure and human possible." If you saw this pick lying in a museum case, you might think it was primitive. But when you see Jose carving with it, you realize that it is really a very sophisticated and refined tool. The weight, the balance, and the temper are perfect, and it gives him exactly the results he asks of it.
But I like a pick, because pick I think is wonderful. With this, if you have patience, possible make a beautiful thing. And like I told before, in Brittany, and the Aztecs and Toltecs, they work with pick.
If you have patience, it's possible to make a beautiful thing. Because he enjoys his work and isn't in a hurry to finish, DeCreeft has patience. Hour after hour he chopped away, removing small chips of stone with his pick, stopping regularly to look, to turn the stone, and look from a different angle and resume his work again. He had patience because he was determined that he would make a beautiful thing. I sped up the action in these photos to show how he pushes into the stone, forming new volumes, smoothing rough areas, slowly creating more definite shapes. Gradually, DeCreeft worked his way into balancing all the elements of the composition, always looking for the best way to use the stone, the best way to express himself within its limits. When the whole piece reaches a point where it is fairly well organized, DeCreeft carves one area in detail and then works to relate the rest of the piece to that. Though he could start with almost any part, he usually starts with the face. He establishes the size of the head, its angle in relation to the body, and something of the expression also. Great care is needed here, since it is one of the most critical operations. If the head is too big, or too small, or at an awkward angle, the whole figure will suffer. The style of the head is also a big factor in determining the style of the body. The closer to the finished surface, the more gentle DeCreeft becomes, until gradually the face emerges from the stone. Now the piece rapidly seems to come to life, as one by one the details of the sculpture emerge. As DeCreeft frees the forms he finds hidden in the stone. When he is involved in making a piece of sculpture, it is on his mind constantly, even when he's doing other things. Always in the back of his mind is the stone.
The point is, I sleep with the stone, I eat with the stone, I do everything with the stone in my mind, no?
It took Jose about 7 weeks to make this piece of sculpture. As I watched him, I saw that there was a real feeling of partnership between the artist, his tools, and his material. DeCreeft always was the boss, but he was a patient and a fair boss who never asked his tools or his stone for more than they could give. He means it when he says,
I respect the stone. I respect like my grandfather.
He feels that the stone has his own value, and he knows also what the stone can become through his labor.
I love the stones because in the beginning it was more by economy, because the stones you find in the mountains, in the streets, in every place, no? But the people, they don't know what value have this piece of stone. But after I polish or I work, I increase the value, and you see the beauty. And meantime, you make a piece of sculpture, no? It's two things. The stone, it has value by itself, and meantime, it helped me, and I helped them.
The tranquility of his farm in Hoosick Falls, New York, is important to DeCreeft. Staying in contact with the work is very hard, and a peaceful life with a minimum of distraction is necessary. Lori, DeCreeft's wife for more than 20 years, does much to provide this for him, taking care of his records and correspondence, keeping their social life to a minimum, and even cutting his hair for him. DeCreeft has simplified his life as much as possible, and getting his hair cut at home is another example of how he likes to be self-sufficient. It is also the best haircut he can get. Although DeCreeft by nature is a gregarious and outgoing man, a man who loves to talk to people, he also realizes that the discipline of sculpture is severe. To give the best to your work, you must literally give your whole life to your art. When he is deeply involved in a piece of sculpture, he rarely has visitors and almost never leaves his farm. He tries to avoid any outside influences and distractions in order that his thoughts might remain more completely with his sculpture. DeCreeft often says that sculpture is 90% thinking and 10% carving. Even while he's thinking, however, Jose is never still. Everything has a purpose. Tending his garden, cutting firewood. He gets his chores done, keeps his hands tough and his body limber, and at the same time thinks over the problems of his sculpture. It took years of study and work to acquire the mastery which enabled DeCreeft to carve this portrait of his wife. Having gained complete control of his tools and materials, DeCreeft won total freedom of expression and developed a style through artistic choice rather than through necessity. DeCreeft is working with the scraper we saw him make out of an old file in his forge. The end was bent slightly and beaten to form a sharp edge. Later he sharpened it more with an abrasive stone. After an area is made fairly smooth with the bush hammer or tooth chisel or file, he scrapes it with this tool to refine the shapes. It is not just a question of making the surface smooth. He is modeling the stone at the same time. Watching him work with this tool, I thought of the pick. It looked rather primitive and crude, lying on the table, but as with the pick, when he used it, the results were wonderful. Although this piece of marble was a tough, solid stone, DeCreeft's sure hand and specialized tools made it look easy. When he let me try my hand on a similar stone, I soon found out that it wasn't. The human body, as portrayed on anatomy charts, cannot be transformed into rounded stone forms such as DeCreeft uses without some interpretation. To copy a figure exactly is merely craftsmanship. To interpret nature to add imagination and spirit, to mold its forms to suit your ideas and still be true to nature, is art. You don't measure a work of art with a ruler, but with your eye. DeCreeft's first concern is with the overall impression of a piece. His first goal is a unity of forms and masses, a harmony of textures and movements. His job is to give optical interest, plus the illusion of reality. DeCreeft's sculptures often appear much bigger than they really are. In fact, many times a stone will appear bigger after he carves it than it did originally. The reason for this is that he always conceives his volumes and shapes in a massive and simplified way. His forms are monumental. When DeCreeft finishes a sculpture, he doesn't just smooth and polish the stone as a lapidary might do. It is a vitally important stage in his work. It is when the forms and details are completely refined. DeCreeft feels that to fully appreciate his sculpture, it must be touched and handled, and when he finishes a sculpture, using any of the many techniques he employs, scrapers, files, rubbing stones, or sandpaper, he constantly runs his hands over the work so that he can feel the way the surface is developing.
It's hard because when you polish, you're possible spoil too. No? It's not the polish to be apart the finish, the compliment. No, it's not question the clean. It's question the finish, and finish is not clean. Finish is sensitive. Is the hand. Is something you can express. Your taste and your experience and your way to see the finish is the moment that you work with the form and with sense and with touch is always interesting. There's quality, there's touch, your chisel, your hand. It will be interesting in your response. You have vibration. You have something. You have life.
Life and spirit. Those are the qualities DeCreeft gives to his stones. His craftsmanship and skill as a stone carver are undeniable, but more important is his spirit.
Always you do find the spirit in anything, in any occasion that you work. It's not the technique, it's not the finish, it's not the craftsmanship, it's the spirit. See, this piece, the sculptor inspires the people understand, and the people feel something.
Because he uses natural stone forms, never imposing artificial elements, and because his females are not specific women, but rather embody the female spirit, DeCreeft's sculpture, like the stone, has qualities which are both timeless and universal. Because DeCreeft thinks mainly of the sculptural elements of a piece, rather than the anecdotal or story part, he was nearly finished before he decided on a name. The Hand of Creation, a female figure, the symbol of life, emerging from and supported by love, the gift of life from nature. Love is the force, the hand, that creates everything.
Love. Love is something very important.
The love of nature, the love of his stones, the love of his work. Only after the piece was finished and signed did DeCreeft bring out his machines, as he calls them. A drill for drilling the hole in the base, and a chain hoist for lifting the piece into position. After watching DeCreeft as he created this piece of sculpture, I understood his love of stones. What to most people is only a rock, to him is an object of great potential beauty. He loves the stone for itself, but also for what he knows it will become through his genius. Being a sculptor, especially a stone carver, is not an easy life. There's a lot of work and sacrifice involved. But for DeCreeft, the rewards make it worthwhile. The excitement and happiness which comes of creating something beautiful, of finding and expressing something of himself in stone. At the age of 81, after 68 years of sculpture, he can still say,
She was born again. I take it the same thing. I be a sculptor.
DeCreeft is a man who is very fortunate, for he has spent his whole life doing the thing he loves most. And we are fortunate also in having an artist who has created so much beautiful sculpture. His life's work, the effort of his spirit and his hands, will inspire the world for generations to come.